Today we dive into staging and what goes into how I handle transfers. And I've just updated it and tried to make the silos look like they're concrete. We also look at the bench work that goes into the staging portion of the railroad. Alright, we're looking at the BN, Chicago Northwestern transfer yard / staging, as well as Amtrak. You can see in the distance there's a three-way switch that leads into a three-way switch. None of this is nailed down. It's all just kind of in place temporarily. See the push pins in place just so I can adjust things as I see fit. The reason for the three-ways was to be able to sandwich in and get myself this front track. And this is actually going to be for the switcher, and I wanted the ability to have the runaround if needed. The storage itself, as far as the back tracks are concerned, this one will be Amtrak, and it'll be the Empire Builder that heads east down to St. Paul, and that's actually where the Conrail and CBQ car is sitting. And with that being said, the next three tracks are going to be the BN, the Burlington Northern. The next three tracks are going to be the Chicago Northwestern, and then the front track is going to be a run-by track. And the way I'm actually going to be handling my transfers is they're not going to actually happen here. It will happen online with the Minnesota transfer at Raymond Avenue Yard. So I will have one set of BN engines, one caboose. There'll be one set of Chicago Northwestern engines and one caboose. And the reason I've got this set up this way is because, let's say this transfer heads to the Minnesota transfer, does its work. It comes back. When it pulls in onto this track, it will head all the way down to the other end. The locomotives are going to pull onto a transfer table that's here. They're going to slide over, and they're going to head back on this front run-by track. When they come back in, they're going to be able to tag onto one of these other two sets of cars. And let's say that they back onto this set. The caboose that was left on this particular train is going to get plucked off by the switcher. He heads out, he grabs the caboose, he heads out, and he heads all the way back down to the transfer table, throws it onto the transfer table, it slides over, and then you'll have this train back up, grab its caboose, pull itself forward, and now it's ready in turn to go out for another transfer run. Now, why have three tracks? As I mentioned before, it was storage, and that allows me to actually turn trains over. So let's say this train went to Raymond Avenue, it came back, and there's 10 cars. Those 10 cars in the next operating session, if they just head right back, the guy's going to look at it and go, oh, I already had these cars. What are you doing? All right, maybe he doesn't say that, but at the end of the day, I don't want the same trains just coming and back and forth, back and forth. So now when this train comes in, I can go to the next track. I can send out a whole new string that he's never seen before. It comes back. Next time you have a session, this track is going to head out, and it's a whole new set of cars. It's not going to be 6 months before this track comes back into play from a transfer perspective, because just the frequency of rotating them like this allows enough of the rolling stock to kind of turn over. Same goes with the Chicago Northwestern. Now, as you see underneath here, you can see a lot of different projects are in place, but I wanted to give you a quick look at what I do as far as the bench work. Now, if we look underneath here, you are seeing I have pre-drilled holes. That's obviously for my electrical. I have the shelving bracket that holds the railroad up. This is a 14-inch bracket on 1x2, the underneath just being a half-inch piece of ply that gets sandwiched between a piece of Homasote. Now here in the Twin Cities, or in Minneapolis, we use this Homasote. It's apparently a sound deadening board that's used in construction. It works well for us because it's sound deadening here, as well as we can run our nails down into it because it's fairly soft. Now, with that said, we look at the actual structure. I use these vertical supports. It's a 2-channel. The bottom shelf has actually got 20-inch brackets on it, which allow me to cantilever off another 4 inches. So I've got 24-inch deck, which is this section here. And you can see a lot of different projects going on as far as the railroad. I've got some BN and Great Northern equipment. I'm putting decoders into engines for my dad. Some of this stuff is for sale. With that said, it just kind of gets hodgepodged and mixed together. I'm also working on, now this is going to be a Great Northern update, but I get a template out in St. Michael on my dad's railroad, and I cut it out into masonite, and then I build the actual facility onto the piece of masonite, get it finished, and then I can just bring it out and drop it onto the railroad, and it's in its place. This here is the same type of thing, but in a larger scale. This is Litchfield. It's going to be a city that he's got on the railroad, that we at least incorporate a main street and do a few things that we'll be able to drop that onto the railroad and have kind of a cool little scene that it's actually going over the top portion of the helix. So it just kind of hides that, as well as gives us some visual interest for people that are looking at the railroad. This building as well, this is a Cargill grain elevator, and I've just updated it and tried to make the silos look like they're concrete, and I didn't go over the top. I just washed it with white paint that was watered down. The overall aesthetic, I think it turned out all right. I used paint markers for the cracks. Once I whitewashed it, I actually just used a wet sand paper and kind of went over the top of it to kind of wear it out a little bit. So that particular building is going into Litchfield as well. But while I deal with some of that type of stuff, I'll work on getting this stuff done as well. So as we look at the actual supplies I'm using for laying track, one of the most important things I find with laying track is actually the track spacing. This goes for the main lines as well as your yards. As you can see, I've got this spacer, and this is what I use to make sure the tracks stay the exact same distance apart. Making sure that you have enough space between them for car clearance, as well as reaching in between if a car becomes derailed to be able to re-rail it. I do use a laser level that I run along and make sure all the tracks are on a straight line. And with that said, it's just overall consistency. That is always important. If you do it prototypically, it looks cool, but at the end of the day, what we are concerned about is operations. So with that said, we want to make sure that we're able to function and operate accordingly. Everybody to each their own when they're laying their track, but this is the current process that I'm using. And so far, it's been working well. We're going to end this episode, and hopefully you enjoy them, and you'll look forward to future episodes. Take care.